Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday evening to you all. I hope you guys are doing great out there tonight and had yourselves a wonderful day. And I hope everyone's been having a great weekend out there so far. Here to bring you a big time update on the tropics. There's a lot of chatter out there about the potential for a big storm in the Gulf of Mexico sometime next week. And listen, I think that chatter is completely warranted. I think with each passing hour, the chances increase that we are going to have some sort of tropical system in the Gulf of Mexico. It's just what do we mean by tropical storm? A tropical system. Is it going to be a tropical storm? Is it going to be just a hurricane? Is it going to be a major hurricane? I think the potential for any of that's on the table. We could have a weaker storm. We could have a major hurricane. So we got a lot of questions that we still got to answer. And what we're going to continue to do here on my channel is just provide 2 updates a day, feed you guys all the latest information. And we've had some changes just over the last hour or two from some of the latest model guidance that I think has really driven off the convection we're getting right now in the Caribbean, the actual current conditions in the central and western Caribbean. So we're going to talk heavy on current conditions, and then we're going to speak on the latest from the National Hurricane Center. We'll go over all model guidance, the GFS, the Euro AI model, the Canadian Icon, the ensemble guidance, and then there'll be a portion of the video where we're kind of nerd out with you guys, right? We'll talk about the environment that does support a hurricane, if this can really consolidate and get going in the Gulf of Mexico. And then we'll talk about steering currents. We'll talk about why this could go one way or the other and what we are thinking it's going to do. Where is this system going? I think we're starting to somewhat narrow the area down on where this system can potentially go. So we're going to speak on all this. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others on the channel have an opportunity to pray over it too. So let's get going. So let's start this off by saying that this is getting generated off something called a CAG, C-A-G, Central American Gyrome. So basically, it's this big, broad area of low pressure that is very broad, very large, and it can just spin across areas of Central America. Typically, Central America is kind of like the central zone of this spin. So you got this huge cyclonic spin, and then occasionally with this spin, right, and I'm going to keep these arrows off your screen here, we'll get areas of energy that can consolidate here, consolidate down here, come together on the Pacific side, maybe even the Bay of Campeche. And then sometimes when this energy can come together, it can develop a low-level circulation, really come together, and all of a sudden we have a tropical cyclone. And then we eventually can get a tropical storm, and then eventually a hurricane. It happens every single hurricane season at least one time. And this is where the origins of this system is going to stem from. Okay, so right now, currently, we're getting a big blow up of convection right here, more so in the central Caribbean. Okay, one thing we are watching for is if this can come together sometime tonight. If it does, it is going to throw all model guidance for a loop. Right now, we're getting this, what we call this TUT, or this kind of expanded upper level low that's diving down right here. Okay, if you look right here, you see these kind of splotches of convection right here, well off the west coast of Florida. It's kind of going like this, right? And then it kind of comes down here and just kind of stalls out over the Yucatan. And then you see all the colors in green, splotches of yellow, and how it's kind of cruising over Cuba right here. That is how the flow is going. Arrow's going this way to the southwest, then it dips down to the south, then it shoots back up to the northeast or east. Okay, that is our TUT digging down. So what is that TUT doing? Well, that TUT is creating divergence aloft. It's basically pushing air away from the system just like that. Okay, so this is allowing for the sustaining and the firing of convection. And anytime I say convection, I mean shower and storm activity. You're getting air pushed away. And I think this will be with this system for the life of the system. So this is what I'm trying to say is the environment is there for a lot of shower and storm activity to fire pretty much at will here in the central and western Caribbean. So is anything going to get going in the short term, like tonight into tomorrow? That's a big question. If it does, all model guidance is just going to dramatically change, and maybe for the worse as far as a worst case scenario. So this is what's going on right now. This blobs of red, black, white, even pink right in here. This is colder cloud tops, which means we have taller updrafts and stronger convection. Okay, so we got to watch. Does this action right here kind of dissipate, kind of disappear? It could, and I wouldn't be surprised one bit we wake up tomorrow morning and this isn't here anymore, or it's displaced over here. But if it looks better, then, man, we could have some dramatic changes pretty fast. So, latest from the National Hurricane Center. Okay, let's update this, see if we have a new update. We don't. I do want to mention this very quick. We have bumped up from a 30 to a 40, well, actually a 20 to a 40% chance of tropical development from a tropical wave that's going to move into this area right in here over the next several days. We could take a name from this, but this is the big area right here. As of the 2 p.m. update, we're going to have another update in about 45 minutes. This is at a 60% chance to develop sometime in the next 7 days. It'll probably happen sometime in the next 4 or 5, if not sooner. I think at the 8 p.m. update, they're going to bump this up to a 70% chance. If not the 8 p.m. update, the 2 a.m. update overnight tonight. So if you're watching this and all of a sudden it's at a 70% chance and this area is in the red, trust me, Mitch sees it, I see it. I'm just making this video before the 8 p.m. update. So I do think they'll bump this from a 60 to a 70% chance sometime tonight. Okay? So just want to throw that out there. For you guys that are wondering, man, why are you showing us wrong information? It doesn't change any of the information I'm going to show you in this video, but I always want to kind of add that disclaimer there. So, latest GFS. Now, I'm going to tell you guys that this GFS is going to freak some people out in the Gulf Coast, especially the eastern Gulf Coast. It's not a forecast, but I have reason to believe that this change in the GFS could be on to something, and it's because of what's firing right now in the Caribbean. Okay? So, latest GFS, we're going to start this with a broad look, okay, because this is coming from the Caribbean, and then we're going to switch it to the southeast and the fly. All right, so this is initializing for Tuesday morning, so sometime in the next, well, Tuesday morning, so in the next couple of days. Has a 1,003 millibar low. That could be a tropical storm potentially. But regardless, just a big blob of green, splotches of yellow down here in the western Caribbean. We move this into Wednesday. All of a sudden, we have a 992 millibar low, a strong tropical storm splitting the gap between the Yucatan and Cuba. And then this is oozing into the Gulf of Mexico at this point, okay? It goes from a 992 millibar low tropical storm to almost a major hurricane, at least a Category 2 hurricane in about 24 hours. So this is where we're going to switch it to the southeast frame here. Okay, and we're going to keep going. So it's a 969 millibar low coming up. This is a Category 2 hurricane, all out. Might even be a major hurricane. Okay, we go another. Let's go all the way to about next Thursday evening. So this is the evening of the 26th. All of a sudden, it has a 951 millibar hurricane. This is a major hurricane, definitely Category 3 or higher at this point. And this is heading right towards the panhandle of Florida. Makes a landfall as a Cat 3, Cat 4 hurricane into areas of the panhandle of the Big Bend of Florida. And then wherever this makes landfall on the Gulf Coast, because something's going to make landfall, it's going to bring a lot of impacts inland too. So for this scenario, for example, brings huge impacts into Georgia, brings huge impacts into the Carolinas. It would not be good for any fall foliage people. They have an opportunity to strip the leaves in the mountains. This is a worst case scenario in my opinion. But I want you to look at the dramatic change. For example, this is initializing for Friday evening. I'm sorry, Saturday. Let's get my days right. Thursday evening, September the 26th. What did the run prior to this look like? Had a 990 millibar tropical storm a little bit further west. So the run at lunchtime, the 12Z, this is the 18Z. That is what? A 39 millibar difference from one run to the next. And you would think, well, that seems pretty dramatic, right, Mitch? Well, it does. But if the energy right now that's firing in the Caribbean actually gets its act together sometime in the next 24 hours, the quicker it gets its act together, the stronger, no doubt, this system will be in the Gulf of Mexico. So we're pulling for the energy to take as long as possible to get its act together in the Caribbean, because I think eventually it will. Okay? But this would bring huge impacts across the southeast. Worst case scenario. Okay? Big change on the GFS. Euro Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, just a big blob of moisture down here in the western Caribbean. Okay? Thursday morning, we have a tropical storm north of the Yucatan. Once again, let's switch this to the southeast frame. Tropical storm down here, 999, that's a tropical storm. And by the way, the next name is Helene. Okay? This would probably take Helene. All right, then we take it into Thursday evening. Remember, on the GFS for Thursday evening, it had a 950-ish millibar hurricane heading right towards the panhandle of Florida. The Euro is a 997 just tropical storm. Huge difference, but a massive storm system covering up, expanding across most of the Gulf of Mexico. We get into Friday morning, 994, makes landfall as a pretty strong tropical storm somewhere in the coastal, like near Mobile to Pensacola, Florida, slingshots a ton of moisture across the deep south. Okay, so this would bring a lot of impacts into the deep south and the southeast. Euro AI model has been pretty solid on where it thinks it's going to make landfall. We take it into Thursday morning, has a 990 millibar tropical storm cruising across the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. Flip it, look at this frame. We move into next Thursday evening, has a Category 1 hurricane, maybe Cat 2, heading right towards the central Gulf coastline, and this makes landfall between Mobile and maybe Pensacola, Florida, sometime Thursday night into Friday morning as about a Category 1 hurricane. Okay, there hasn't been a lot of different wild swings with the Euro AI model. So if this does end up like making a landfall, like kind of right between like Biloxi, Mobile, and Pensacola, then I would say that the Euro AI model's done well. But would throw a lot of moisture across the southeast. The Canadian model, not going to spend as long on this. In fact, we're just going to flip right to the southeast frame here. Should have already done that. Canadian model, here it comes. All it is just this kind of weird, strung out looking tropical storm that kind of blasts right into the Gulf coastline sometime Thursday. But this would be a better case scenario where it would just be a weak tropical storm, would bring a lot of moisture. But that's the Canadian. There's been a pretty big difference with that too. And then the Icon model, we'll just fast forward here all the way to, well, no, we'll go right here. The Icon model is just like, here it is, just like the Canadian model. A weird kind of elongated, strung out tropical storm makes landfall into southeast Louisiana. The one thing I want to watch for, and this is all global model guidance, okay? One thing I want to watch for overnight is how more aggressive some of these other models get, and one, if the GFS actually backs off. That's a big question that I want to see get answered sometime tonight. But I can tell you the European ensemble guidance, okay, this goes between now and about a week out. All right, there's still some members that kind of get lost down here in the Bay of Campeche, the western Gulf of Mexico. But the ones that shoot across the Gulf of Mexico, right, and then make landfall on the Gulf coastline, pretty much the consensus is this is going to make a landfall anywhere from the Big Bend of Florida to maybe southeast Louisiana. Texas into the central Louisiana coastline, I said this morning, I think with each passing hour, I think this area is getting more and more ruled out. But of course, you need to keep your guard up. But this is really the area right in here that you really want to stay tuned, because a lot of these runs go right up across the central to east central Gulf of Mexico. All right, so what about the GEFS ensemble? Okay, and how far out are we? Can we go here? And unfortunately, we don't have the completion of this run, which kind of stinks. We're only 96 hours out, so we kind of have to flip back and we have to look. Let's see. Yep, that stinks. All right, so we have to look at the 12Z run, and we'll have to go about, let's just go a week out. And same thing, and the 18Z GEFS is running right now, but most of these members come right into Florida, actually. Okay? And some of them get kind of trapped down here also, deeper into the Gulf of Mexico, the BOC. Okay, so let's talk about, it's kind of a portion of the video where we nerd out with you guys a little bit. So hopefully you get something out of this. And my job here, what I try to do to the best of my ability is explain this in a way where you guys, the audience, can understand. So I should be good at this by now because I've explained it many times over the last few months, breaking down tropical systems during hurricane season. So let's use pink. Yeah, I think that comes up pretty good. So in the northern hemisphere, low pressure spins around like this, right? Okay. So in the mid to low levels, especially the low levels, this is spinning around just like this around this actual center of low pressure, right? So what you're looking at here is winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere, 200 millibars up, 35 to 40,000 feet above, in this case, the surface of the ocean. Okay, but up in the air. All right, so if you notice here, in this area blue, okay, this is where we have some stronger flow aloft. Winds are going much quicker in speed than they are, say, in the white. The white area, you have very light flow aloft. In the blue area, this is, winds at about anywhere from 20 to as much as 60 knots. Okay, up here, it's racing fast, like, well over 70 to 80 knots. Fast winds, okay? But let's not focus too much on that. So we know that this is spinning just like that. In the upper levels of the atmosphere, air is getting pushed away from the center of the system. And it's actually going down like this. You see these like little lines with little arrowheads embedded into them. Then they kind of dip down here. They kind of go down like that. It's getting dispersed out right here. Right here. Down here, it kind of gets kind of weird. Little squigglies like this, right? But regardless, what's happening here is air is being dispersed away from the center of the system. So whether it's being dispersed kind of anticyclonically or just straight away from that low-level circulation, as it's getting pushed away above the top of the actual storm system, the tropical cyclone, this allows for more air to rise, then that gets pushed away, and it's a continuous cycle of rising air. If you don't know much about rising air allows for the sustaining of convection and the firing of convection, shower, and storm activity. What does that do? Well, that creates a big-time moist environment for these tropical systems. What do tropical systems like? Well, they like moist air. So this allows for the tropical system to get their act together, improve their structure, therefore strengthen. So what I'm trying to say here is the upper wind pattern supports a strengthening tropical system. Now, I know you are probably thinking, well, what's up with these weird squiggly lines down here? Well, you see this area I'm circling right here, this is in white. So this means there's just light flow aloft. Okay, so really in this case, it really doesn't matter whether the air is being pushed, like this, okay, or like this. The flow is so weak that there's no shear affecting the system at all, either way. Okay, so if you had these streamlines that you're seeing like this, if they were going like right up against the storm, then this would create shear, say, on the northwest side of the system. Therefore, it would allow for some dry air to get in because that shear would disrupt the convection on the northwest side of the system because air will be blowing against the system, and not just the upper levels of the atmosphere, probably all levels. Okay, so hope that made sense. This upper wind pattern remains with this system for a while. In fact, on the GFS, we get all the way starting to ooze into the southern Gulf of Mexico. In this case, air is being dispersed completely away from the system, just like that. Gets a little weird right into here, but just a huge outflow channel getting dispersed outward from the system. That's why I really think, these arrows are actually pointing towards the low here. But like I said, this is in white. So this is a lot of light flow, not affecting this system much. Okay? But there is so much air getting pushed out from this storm right here. This is creating a lot of divergence aloft. This is why I think that this could be a big rainmaker for Florida and the southeast, regardless of this low-level circulation goes here, or goes, here. I think a lot of rain could happen. Of course, if it goes way over here, then the axis of heavy rain is going to shift further west. But I think with so much air being pushed out away from this storm just like that, that is going to create an environment for a big push of moist air, therefore rain, storm activity well into the southeast ahead of this storm system. I really think it's going to evolve like that. So the upper wind pattern certainly supports strengthening, guys, and as we move forward here on this particular run, the GFS, you do have some strong westerly flow aloft kind of going up against this system right here, but it's not enough to really weaken this on the western side. The dry air does not come into this system in time. Therefore, unfortunately, you would have a worst case scenario with a category 3 or 4 hurricane making landfall into the Florida coastline. Okay. And, you can see this very compact cocoon moist bubble around this low level circulation too. So here's a great example. Remember where I was just drawing on here about a lot of moisture getting slung north of the system and kind of the divergence aloft, a lot of air being pushed to the northeast side. This is, God, that is an ugly arrow, ain't it? So a lot of air getting pushed off this way and this way. And you see all that moist air in the green. Okay, moist air is in the green, dry air is in the brown. This tells me you're going to have a big slug of moisture moving into Florida as early as Thursday morning. Okay, the actual low-level circulation, the actual hurricane is down here. Dry air is on the western side, but it's not getting into the actual storm system at all. This thing has a compact, moist environment. And you keep this going, and yeah, dry air is trying for the life of it to try to catch up and get entangled in this cyclonic flow of this tropical system, but it does not get there in time because shear is hitting the system, eating up the convection on the western side of the system, but the dry air just does not get to the actual heart of the system, which is the low-level circulation, which is where you see the red L. But look at all this moist air getting kind of thrown out ahead of this system, well up the eastern seaboard into the southeast, just like that, guys. So we continue to see this scenario in model guidance where a lot of rain, a lot of moisture, this huge rain shield basically gets pushed well ahead of the system. And I believe it because there's so much air in the upper levels of the atmosphere getting pushed and channeled outward to the northern, northeast, and eastern side of the system. So I think that this will bring widespread impacts even away from the storm system. And, you know, with a weaker scenario like, say the Euro, okay? Here comes the Euro. It's a little bit slower. This is a great example of a weaker system. You see how the Euro, check this out. The Euro is right here. This is the low-level circulation. Look at all this dry air getting entangled in this system. So it's not able to develop. The entire western side of the Euro's kind of depiction of what could happen is getting just completely ate up by dry air. But look at the entire eastern side. Huge slug of moisture getting pushed northward. Okay, but a lot of dry air on the western side. And there's a lot of model runs that show something like that. This looks like a half a storm, like a half a tropical storm or a half a cane. Okay, a lot of moisture still with it, but it's all displaced to the east side of the system. Some wild looking stuff there, but it could happen. Now, if we're talking about steering currents, the more we go into time, the more that I think that this is becoming much easier to figure out and explain. For example, there's not even any, if we start this for Tuesday morning on the GFS, there's not even any real ridging across this entire area that you're seeing. We only have blue for an example to see. So the blue you're seeing on your screen is low pressure. Flow around low pressure goes just like this, cyclonically, right? So flow around the bottom base of this trough of low pressure over the U.S. is going just like this. And flow around our actual tropical system, which could be future Helene or Isaac, is going like this, cyclonically. So what is all this white here? Well, this is just a weakness, just light flow. There's nothing going on here. There's no real steering. And honestly, the only thing that you got here is kind of some sort of tut that's kind of going just like that, that's steering this system somewhat, but that tut will eventually go away. Okay, and this system basically is just going to have an opportunity to strengthen, move north, and whether it's slowly, kind of at a medium pace, fast, not quite sure. It depends on how quick I think this trough maybe dives down. If this trough is like right in here, then obviously this is going to pick up some speed faster. But regardless, with steering right in here, there's nothing really steering this one way or the other. So what do we know about low pressure? Well, low pressure always wants to gain latitude, especially the stronger it gets, the more it wants to go north. So that's exactly what this blob of blue does down here. Watch as we go here in time. A little bit of ridging does start to build over the eastern U.S. So that's something to watch. So at this point, we have a tropical storm, Category 1 hurricane, just sneaking into the Gulf of Mexico, which, by the way, is right here. Okay, this is our tropical system. This is kind of a cutoff low diving down, or an upper trough. The flow around this is going just like that. And now we got some ridging as an example to show in your map. So this kind of orange color here, the flow around this ridge is going just like that. So I think at this point, our low here is probably close enough. Two things going on here. One, it's a strengthening storm system, so it's gaining latitude regardless. And then two, it's starting to probably feel some flow off the bottom edge of this upper low that's probably yanking on this storm system to make it move north. Okay? It's like the steering currents are like gears in the atmosphere. Pretty wild stuff. So eventually, this is just an easy shot north. I really should just round it off by saying that. Not only does this trough kind of attach to it and help the slingshot it north, there's nothing stopping it whatsoever to not go north. And eventually, that's exactly what it does. It latches onto it. You can see the flow that just kind of slings this up into the southeast. Now, the Euro is a little bit different, but I'm honestly just showing you this as kind of an educational purpose to kind of understand how the steering works. So that's all I got, guys. Been some wild stuff. Some wild stuff in model guides, especially over the last several hours. So could be a big update in the morning. You know, what I want to see overnight is the GFS going to kind of back off, or either is all model guides going to follow the GFS with a more concerning scenario? So that's some questions we'll answer as we wake up tomorrow morning. God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful night, and I'll talk to you again Sunday morning.